all, my name is Emily and I hope you're doing okay and being safe in these really uncertain times. This is my review of Stalking Jack the Ripper by Kerri Maniscalco. I've talked about this book a couple times in other videos, but I still have so many thoughts about this book that I decided to make a separate video review for this book. This review contains spoilers for the novel, so if you haven't read the book and you don't want to be spoiled, please read the book and then come back to this video. So if you need a short refresher, Stalking Jack the Ripper is a novel about a girl called Audrey Rose. She is a daughter of aristocracy. She is also secretly apprenticing with her uncle in forensics, and she finds herself involved with the investigation of the Ripper murders, which took place in London in 1888. So I already came into this book with pretty low expectations about plot and historical accuracy. I'd already read From Hell by Alan Moore, so I thought this was just going to be a fun read with a Victorian setting. I was determined to just have fun with it and turn my brain off. And initially the writing style at the start of the novel had this more formal Victorian language, so I had some hope. But as I progressed with the book, I found that this veneer of Victorian authenticity was actually quite superficial, and I quickly found that there were some flaws of the book that I simply couldn't ignore, and some that were just straight up irresponsible. So first I'm going to address some flaws that have already been addressed by other people on places like Goodreads. I don't think I'm breaking a lot of new ground here, but Audrey Rose is an insufferable protagonist with an anachronistic voice. She really does not act like she belongs in a Victorian setting. She's constantly going on about how she's not afraid of gore like other girls, and she doesn't fall for boys like other girls. And it's like, we get it. You're an empowered woman for your time. And moments like that just got really tiresome because that was basically her entire character. The book takes every opportunity to give us a scene where a guy says to Audrey Rose, "Oh, this scene isn't for a lady's eyes," just so she can roll her eyes and say, "I assure you, I am perfectly capable of handling a little blood. I dissect dead people on the side." She's also full of platitudes about how hard it is for women and how women deserve better, but she constantly puts down women around her like her aunt or her cousin. She has no strong relationships with women around her, and she has no women that she looks up to, so her attempts to be feminist feel hollow. It is possible to write a story with a strong, progressive woman who still feels like a woman of her time. I just finished The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. That book does that perfectly. This book, however, definitely failed at that. I'm going to circle back to Audrey Rose and how I think she fits into this era, but first let's address a couple other things. I confess that I did not guess the final culprit of the Ripper murders the moment he stepped into the story, but it only took a short process of elimination to realize that the culprit was Audrey Rose's brother Nathaniel. We knew the killer was connected to Audrey Rose, and we knew he had to have some sort of surgical experience. And so the book acted like this was a big reveal when really it wasn't. And also it ended up making the murders into some sort of weird Frankenstein crossover, which I did not like at all. But basically all the detective work of the story is Audrey Rose sticking her nose into places she doesn't belong, and then the clues just falling into her lap through a set of plot conveniences. I think at some point one of the clues comes when a psychic tells it to her. So even as a mystery, this was kind of disappointing and not the fun investigative journey I was hoping for. So I feel like one of the big draws of the story is the romance between Audrey Rose and Thomas Cresswell. He is one of Audrey Rose's uncle's students. I was looking forward to seeing this romance develop with this intelligent, learned man, but I frankly found him just as insufferable as Audrey Rose. Right from when they meet, Thomas Cresswell is just negging Audrey Rose, and that just continues through the entire story. He's always making these backhanded comments about her appearance or her intelligence. I've been in relationships where the other person negs you all the time, and it is really corrosive to your self-esteem. It is really beyond me why a woman in Audrey Rose's station would give someone like him the time of day, but really she just glares at him and is distracted by how good looking he is, and they keep sniping at each other over and over even after they get together, and not in an intelligent way. And I was looking at Audrey Rose like, come on, you're better than this. You're supposed to be this intelligent, aristocratic girl. To you, this man should be just some annoying nothing. But I guess there's no accounting for taste. And also Thomas is so transparently a Sherlock ripoff. "I assessed where you were going by your manner of dress and the trains that are running at this time of day." And he does this so much, and I'm just like, just stop. You're not Sherlock. You can't hold a candle to Sherlock. While we're in the vein of characters, it really pissed me off how inconsistent the character of Audrey Rose's father was. He comes across initially as the strict gentleman who wants his daughter to be a proper lady of society, but he never really does anything to this end. He never gets anyone in his household to watch her or chaperone her to places, get a hard-ass governess on his daughter's case, send her to Paris, you know, things that an aristocrat would typically do back then to get an unruly daughter into shape. Like, all Audrey Rose has to do to go to her forensics lessons is be like, oh, I'm going shopping, and her dad is like, okay. At some point, he gets Audrey Rose's aunt to stay with them for a while, and she has all kinds of platitudes about how women should behave, but I never got the sense that she restricted Audrey Rose's freedom in any real way. She was just kind of a temporary inconvenience. And then when her father discovers that she's been doing forensics, he threatens to throw her out of the house. He doesn't really do anything tangible, but it's still a big threat. But then all Audrey Rose has to do is put on this very masculine outfit and march right up to her dad and say, you're not the boss of me, I'm gonna do my forensics thing anyway, and then fucks right off. And he's just so taken aback that he just lets her go and doesn't do anything. And I'm just like, I get that he's slightly unstable, but is he like made of paper? Unstable or not, this guy is an aristocrat. He has an entire household of servants at his disposal that he can just sick on her and keep her in her place. Like, did Carrie Maniscalco watch any Downton Abbey? And in the end, after this revelation that Nathaniel is a murderer, he just changes his mind on a dime and allows Audrey Rose to go to forensic school in Romania. And to boot, she's going to be accompanied by Thomas Cresswell, a man he does not know from Adam. Like, even with events like that, how do you change your mind so drastically and wholeheartedly? I get changing your mind, but you are a man of society. You would begrudge the decision a little bit. Like, basically, he was the character we were supposed to think was Jack the Ripper so that we would be distracted from Nathaniel the whole time. So he had to look bad when it was convenient to the plot. But even when he does look bad, he's not even that imposing. He doesn't do that much to impede Audrey Rose's freedom. Like, he could have been used as a true-to-life obstacle to Audrey Rose. It could have shown the real restrictions in her life. But it seems Carrie Maniscalco didn't really know how to use his character. Now, this leads me to the main issues I had with this book. I've touched on anachronism and historical inaccuracy, but I don't expect authors to get everything right about a historical period. It's just not possible. But when you are writing about a historically definitive set of events like the Ripper murders, you are presumed to be making some sort of statement about the circumstances surrounding that event. And you have a responsibility to handle the history respectfully because these were real people who died horribly, and these events really affected the British psyche. In From Hell, for instance, Alan Moore used these murders to explore secret societies, political corruption, class disparity, as well as occult ideas. Now, Carrie Maniscalco seemed to be trying for a statement about how hard women had it during the Victorian era, and that's fine. There's a lot you can say. But the failure of this book is that it doesn't properly reflect on the situations of each of the female victims in any novel or meaningful way. And it doesn't even accurately represent the life of the woman who is the main character of this story. Like, I get you want Audrey Rose to be this badass woman, but I had no sense of the realities that would have defined the life of a girl like her. I had no sense that she was a girl from aristocracy. Her life had none of the trappings of that class at that time. Like, if you were a girl who grew up in the upper classes, you were handled with kid gloves and you were surrounded by servants all the time. You constantly had duties to your family and household, which might include preparing to come out to society or participating in social engagements. Again, anyone who's watched Downton Abbey knows that there was a rigid structure to how you lived your life if you were from this class. Another detail that kind of pissed me off was that nobody addresses Audrey Rose properly. Everyone, even former servants, address her as Miss Wadsworth, Miss Wadsworth this, Miss Wadsworth that. But really they should have been calling her My Lady or Lady Audrey. Like, does she belong to aristocracy or not? I don't know, because Audrey Rose never had to deal with any of these things. It would have been so interesting to see her navigating the trappings and obstacles of being a lord's daughter, having to convince servants to turn a blind eye to her activities, dealing with servants talking among themselves and tattling to their superiors about her, and God forbid, dealing with the social consequences of her actions actions, but she gets away scot-free. How you can tell that this book didn't really care about the history of this period is in the little things. One of the more egregious examples is when Audrey Rose is convinced by her cousin to put kohl around her eyes when they're going out together. Like, kohl is really strong eyeliner. A really important aspect of women's beauty during the Victorian era was how much you were not supposed to wear makeup. This was especially if you were in the upper classes. If you did, it was very subtle, like a bit of rouge on the cheeks or lips and maybe light powdering. But kohl, it would have been super obvious. You literally did not wear obvious eyeliner unless you were a prostitute or an actress. That was how taboo this was. And it's not like Carrie Maniscalco was trying to make Audrey Rose out to be some sort of beauty rebel, because nobody alienates her for doing it. I mean, she just feels all confident when she wears it, and Thomas thinks she's hot stuff. And this might seem like a nitpick, but if you get a detail like that wrong, then you don't really understand the social expectations of women in that period. You don't truly understand the various types of oppression women were experiencing at that time. Therefore, it's very hollow when Audrey Rose thinks about these murdered women and thinks, man, it's a harsh world for women out there, when she doesn't really experience any oppression of her own. This novel could have made a great statement about how women in this period experience all kinds of limitations to their freedom, whatever class they're in, albeit different types of limitations. But because of a blatant disregard for the historical realities of the time, it doesn't. Instead, we're left completely unanchored in this period because none of these supposed oppressions feel real. This just leaves me thinking, if you don't care for the history, why even have a story set during the Victorian era? Why even use these historical events if you're going to change so much surrounding them? Ultimately, I gave this book 2 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. It was fun at times, but overall I thought this was a pretty poor execution of historical fiction. It was more interested in having a Victorian aesthetic rather than actually being real to the Victorian era. However, I just might read the next book, Hunting Prince Dracula. I have a feeling that Carrie Maniscalco's style might fit a fantastical setting a bit better. So we'll see how that book works out. If it doesn't improve, I won't continue with the series. So those were my thoughts on Stalking Jack the Ripper. Please like this video if you liked it, and if you want more of this content, please subscribe to my channel. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Goodreads, and I will see you in my next video.